Okay. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go over a little bit about the area of Lulav Hayavesh. So it's one of the psulim of a Lulav on Sukkos, is that the Lulav can't be dried out. So these ideas are stuff that I worked out with my dad, also named Rabbi Zucker, and with my brother-in-law, Rabbi Moshe and it was like a collaborative thing. So in lieu of trying to go b'shem each person for every different component of what we said, just assume that that whole group of people came up with all these ideas, and I won't have to go to the trouble of saying it in everybody's name every single time. Okay? All right, so I think, is it better if I just read through the sources? Like, you guys didn't have so much time, so and you guys have questions, obviously, feel very free. I don't want to be talking the whole time at all. So feel very free to ask both on the content and the ideas, and hopefully we'll explore the area a little bit. And ultimately what I want to do is, depending on how much time we have in the next couple of days, I want to at least examine Rashi and the Rambam's shitas about Lulav Hayavesh, and maybe if there's time, I'm going to be here Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so if there's time, we'll also try to do the Ravid's shita on Lulav Hayavesh. All right, sound good? Yeah. Okay. So let's start with the Mishnah on Chavtasam Abayz. Let's make sure it's recording. Okay, good. And I'll just go through. So we're going to do the Mishnah and a little bit of the first piece of Gemara, and we're going to do Rashi Shita, and then we'll bounce over to Tosfos, and we'll deal with Tosfos' problems with Rashi. All right? Okay. So the Mishnah starts like this. It says, Lulav ha'gazol v'hayavesh pasal. So a lulav that's stolen or that's dried out is pasal. Okay? For the mitzvah. So Rashi says like this. Lulav ha'gazol, lulav kaf shel tamarim. So a lulav is a palm branch, right? Like we're familiar with. V'hadar tani hadas v'arava ba'apei nafshayu. So v'hadar tani means that it returns, it goes back, and it teaches. Hadas and arava, it teaches these psulim by hadas and arava ba'apei nafshayu, by themselves. So later in this parak, you're going to have separate mishnayos. This mishnah is going to go through the psulim that are applicable to lulav. And then later you'll have psulim that are applicable to hadas and to arava in their own separate mishnayos. Okay? So it doesn't mean that these things do or don't apply necessarily to those, but they have their own mishnayos to get to later. Okay, we're going to focus on lulav for now. Okay, so Rashi says the next dibra hamaschil gazel, so a lulav that's stolen, pasal, right? The Mishnah says pasal. Why? Ulakachtem lachem ksiv mishel lachem. Okay, so the pasuk in Emor, right? So the Torah goes through in Parshas Emor. That's where you have like all the different paragraphs in the Torah about the different holidays. I mean, it comes up in a few places, but kind of the main big time one is in Emor. Right, and that has like the different mitzvahs. Like the mitzvah of shofar is brought down in Parshas Emor, and matzah is brought down in Parshas Emor, and other places too. But it goes through the mitzvahs there. So and sukkah and lulav, so they're all brought down there. So the pasuk for lulav, you guys familiar with this pasuk at all? I don't know if you've seen it. You guys are doing sukkah, right? We've been focusing on mitzvahs sukkah mostly, not lulav, from what I hear. Yeah, so far, okay. So the pasuk by lulav says like this. It says ulakachtem lachem bayom harishon. Right, you should take for yourselves, right, on the first day of Sukkos, pre-eitz hadar. Right, the fruit of a beautiful tree, kapos tamarim, right, palm branches, the anaf eitz avos, and the leaves of a thick tree. That refers to hadassim. The chachamim tell us the arvei nachal, and arvei just means the aravos of, right? Arvei nachal, the aravos of like a stream, basically means aravos. Okay, so it says pri eitz hadar esrog, kapos tamarim lulav, anaf eitz avos hadas, and arvei nachal aravos. All right, good. Yeah. Okay. So, but the key thing that the Gemara focuses in on at one point, and Rashi's quoting it here, is that it says "Ulakachtem lachem." You take for yourselves. Okay. So the Chazal, the Tanoim, they darshan that lachem you have to take for yourself. You guys know this limud? You have to take for yourself. You have to own your lulav, basically. That's the limud from lachem. Lachem means for you. It has to be taken for you. It has to be your. These minim, the four minim has to belong to you. So if it's stolen, it's puzzle because it doesn't belong to you. Okay? We're not going to focus on it, but that's what Rashi says here. All right, we good?
Yeah.
No? Okay. So we're going to focus on Yavesh, right? So let's see Rashi on Yavesh. So why is Yavesh pasal? Yavesh means dried out. So Yavesh is pasal diba'inon mitzvah mehuderes. So you need a beautiful mitzvah. Okay? Where do you get this from? Dichsiv ve'anvehu. Because the pasuk says in Oz Yashir, right? We say it all the time. Zed keli ve'anvehu. Right? This is my God, right? And I will beautify him. Right? And the Gemara elsewhere in Shabbos, I think it's in Shabbos, has a limud and it says ve'anvehu. You have to beautify God. What does it mean beautify God? You can't beautify God. Doesn't mean anything, right? So the Gemara goes one step further. It says, not just do it in the best possible fashion. It will
do it publicly, maybe?
not well. It's good possibility. The Gemara says more directly to the meaning of the pasuk. Beautify him means do the mitzvos in a way that's beautiful. Right? The actual limud of the Gemara is it says hisna'el lefanav
Beautiful
b'mitzvos.
to you or to...
Well, the mitzvah has to be, let's say, objectively beautiful. And the Torah Sheba'al Peh will lay down various requirements in different places of what beautiful could mean. Okay? So Rashi says here, by this mitzvah, by the Daled Minim, Lulav, if you don't have this aspect of Zekeli Vanveyu, of beautifying the mitzvah, then it's puzzle. And what is at least one aspect of beautification which is necessary here? A dried out Lulav is not beautiful. So it has to be damp, it has to be, still not dry. Moist, whatever the right word is, not dry. So and if it's dry, it's puzzle because it's a violation of Zekeli Vanveyu. Okay? So far so good? Dylan, no trouble yet?
Not yet.
Okay, good. Everybody else good? Tamir? Yeah? Okay. All right. So that's Yavesh. Right? I'm going to go through the rest of the Mishnah. I'm just going to read through it just so we see it. I'm not going to read the Rashis because it's going to take up some extra time and it's not really going to be relevant to what we want to discuss. So, God willing, when you guys come back to do Lulav HaGazal, this parak, you'll see all this stuff and you'll go through these Rashis. But I just don't want to get super bogged down, okay? You guys okay with that? If you want, I'll read the Rashis if you want. But if not, I'm okay with it.
We'll pass the motion.
Okay. Good? Yeah? Everybody? Okay. All right, so the rest of the Mishnah, I'll just go through it quickly. It says like this. It says, Shel Asherah, if the Lulav comes from an Asherah, that's a tree which is worshipped for Avodah Zarah. V'shel Ir Hanidachas, or if the tree grows in a city which the whole city turns to Avodah Zarah, and the halacha is that you have to destroy such a city. Puzzle. So that Lulav is puzzle too. And the basic reason is that those lulavim, those locations, the tree, the city, those have to be destroyed completely. And halachli, it's as if those lulavim are not even there. So it's as if the lulav is not even there, it doesn't qualify as a good lulav because it's as if you're picking up nothing. Okay, good. Yeah. Yaakov, you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Next, niktam rosho. If the top of the lulav is chopped off, nifritzu olav, or if the leaves, according to Rashi, the way he learns this, nifritzu olav means the leaves all fall off. Puzzle, that's puzzle too. Nifridu olav, if the leaves, like the lulav and the leaves all kind of point straight up, like lulav, all those individual things are all leaves, right? So you kind of like peel each leaf out separately, and you could you ever do this like for fun after sukkahs? Like you just kind of like take the leaves and like pull them out one by one. So that's nifritzu olav. If you pull them out, the leaves fall off. That's puzzle. But if you just kind of like bend them, or not if you do, even if they just happens, and they each like kind of get spread out and bent to the side instead of sticking straight up. So that's not great.
That's probably the nicest looking thing.
Chazal didn't think so. So
like separated?
Yeah, exactly. Like they're separated out to the sides instead of pointing up. But like they're fanned out, basically.
So the ideal lulav is one that when you shake it doesn't actually like shake.
Well, no, it should shake a little bit. They should be pointing up. They shouldn't be like attached to each other.
It shouldn't be when you shake it, the whole thing just...
It shouldn't like... If when you shake, I'll put it this way, if when you shake it, the leaves kind of make noise and like they rattle and they kind of like spread out a little bit, that's good. But if when you're shaking it, you're basically picking up not something that looks like this, but like, this is like your lulav, let's say. These are the leaves pointing up. If instead it looks like this, that's bad. Okay?
At rest, it says it's bad.
Say it again?
At rest.
Yes, correct, exactly. If at rest, it's like that.
Or you find detached actually separated from the thing, like if you didn't have your hand around it, it would fall apart.
Yeah, that's the case before. That's nifritzu.
Okay,
Yeah,
nifritzu.
Nifritzu means not. I'm just learning like Rashi.
Fanned out.
Yeah, fanned out exactly.
All right.
So if it's nifritzu, kosher. So that's kosher as long as they're still attached. Even if they're fanned out, that's okay. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yogdenu Mimala. Rabbi Yehuda says if they're fanned out like that, you should tie them up so that they kind of point straight up, like kind of force them back to the position that we kind of are used to them being in. All right. Tzine hara barzel kshiros. So tzine hara barzel, the Gemara deals with is a certain species of lulav that's kosher. Let's not get into what it is specifically. I think the leaves are a little bit shorter, if I remember right. Okay, fine. Lulav sheyesh bo shlosha tfachim kedei lenanea bo kosher. So a lulav that has 3 tfachim, in order to shake it, is kosher. So this is the shear of the length of the lulav. How long does the lulav have to be? It has to be 3 tfachim, right? Tefach is like the length of your fist. It has to be 3 tfachim tall, so you have enough to shake, basically. Okay, all right, but. Kind of let's gloss over everything I just read for the last 3 minutes, and let's just focus in on Yavesh, okay? Dried out lulav is puzzle. Why? You guys tell me.
It's not hither.
Not hither, right. According to Rashi, what does it violate? Which pasuk? Zekeli Vanvei. Okay? Let's do a little bit more. Just going to do the very first few lines of Gemara. The Gemara goes into a whole thing here about how exactly the lulav, which is stolen, is a problem, right? Rashi said it's because the lulav has to be yours, right? L'kachtem lachem has to belong to you. The Gemara goes through a whole shaklavataria. You guys know that term? Shaklavataria, right? Back and forth. It deals with, is it really because it's not yours, or is it because it's a mitzvah haba avera? Meaning, since you stole it and stealing is an avera, your doing of the mitzvah is through an avera. Is that the problem? So the Gemara goes through a whole thing. We're not going to get into it, but I just want to do the very first few lines of the Gemara, which introduces that because it mentions Yavesh, and it'll be helpful for us. Okay? You guys good?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep going. No questions, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the Gemara says like this. It says, Ka pasik vitani. So the Gemara stops and teaches. Right? So basically, the Mishnah stops and teaches. Basically, what the Gemara is saying is, the Mishnah teaches stam. Right? Rashi says, the first Rashi in the Gemara says, Ka pasik vitani, pasal. Right? So the Gemara, it introduces the first couple of cases, Lulav Hadazel and Lulav Hayavesh, pasal. So it just stops and it says that. Stop. Okay? What's the implication of, so who cares? What's the implication of this? So the Gemara, thankfully, goes further and tells us what it's getting at. It says, Lo shna biyom tov rishon, v'lo shna biyom tov sheni. So the Gemara, the Mishnah rather, makes it sound like there's no difference in terms of this halacha, just as pasal. Sounds like pasal means Yom Tov Rishon and Yom Tov Sheni, equally. Right? If it meant it was only pasal to say Yom Tov Rishon, it should have said pasal be Yom Tov Rishon. Right? You guys buy the question?
Not really, to be honest.
You don't buy it? Okay.
I don't know how to buy it, so I don't really get what it's saying.
Basically, it's saying like this, saying that the Mishnah says pasal stam. So the question, here's the issue. Maybe I should give a little background because maybe this is relevant and maybe I'm assuming that you guys.
I guess the question is what is the Havamina thing that would be a distinction between the 2 days?
Yeah, go ahead, Yaakov.
It's only the rice on the first day.
So the mitzvah of lulav, exactly, good job. Min HaTorah is you only have to do it on the first day. So, for example, if you have a suffix about whether your lulav is kosher or not, on the first day, suffix deoraisa l'chumra, so you should look for another lulav. On the second day, it's already for us. It's already midrabanan. So, once you hit the second day, the mitzvah is derabanan the whole rest of the time. All the rest of the days is sukkos. So, any suffix, let's say, would be midrabanan. Okay. The other thing, which makes this a little more complicated, but we're not going to get into it heavily because it's not our area and it isn't going to be relevant at this point, is that in the Beis HaMikdash, the mitzvah of picking up the lulav is midoraisa all 7 days. Okay? So outside the Beis HaMikdash, doraisa on the first day, derabanan on the rest of the days. In the Beis HaMikdash, doraisa every day. Okay? The basic assumption, which the Gemara seems to be making here, is that the Mishnah is talking about outside the Beis HaMikdash, which is why you would differentiate between the first day and the other days. You could there are ways to learn the Mishnah where it's talking about even inside the Beis HaMikdash, and for some reason it's differentiating between the first day and the other days, meaning the point that I'm trying to make is like this, that you still can say conceptually that in the Beis HaMikdash, even though the mitzvah is min HaTorah all 7 days, you can say that conceptually there's still a difference between the first day and the other 6 days, but again, not so much our area. But there's Torah there that we could work through. Okay? You good? So the point is, in terms of your questions, it's a good question. In terms of the question of why you would think there is any difference between the first day and the other days, that's basically the issue. Doraisa versus Derabanan. So you might think these psulim are only in the Doraisa case. Okay? Yeah? Binyamin, right? Yeah? You good? Okay.
I mean, I know I'm asking a meta, but what we quit meta is is this a normal Havamina for the Gemara to have when you have a Doraisa? I mean, I don't know any of the things we have that are
right.
Doraisa for 1/7 of the time, and then like the following days are Derbanan.
Right.
Is this is this the usual Havamina that you would think that it's only the puzzle's only going on Doraisa?
I don't know if there's really, like you say, I don't know if there's so many other cases like it, but I think the point that it's a good question that you're asking. You'd probably have to go case by case and see like what makes sense in terms of the way that the Rabbanan was set up.
So it depends.
It would depend. I wouldn't say it's like a blanket rule, right. But it's not crazy. I'll give you an intuition in it if you want. Meaning you could say that the mitzvah min HaTorah is a certain way, and the mitzvahs min Rabbanan, when they're like this, especially when it's basically saying that you have a chiyuv min HaTorah and then it's extended midrabanan, right? Some mitzvahs midrabanan are just new mitzvahs, right, so to speak. Like Netilas Yadayim is a mitzvah midrabanan. Let's say it's based on a doraisa, because every mitzvah midrabanan is based in a certain sense on a doraisa. But it's not like we're saying do something midoraisa for more time than you otherwise would have. You know, here in this type of case where it's saying basically take your doraisa and do it for more of the time, you could theoretically say that what did the Rabbanan do? They said they didn't say just do the mitzvah min HaTorah in its full form for more days. You could say that what they did is they said they took the basics of the mitzvahs lulav and they were mechayev you in it for more of the time, but they weren't mechayev you in the full-fledged mitzvah. So maybe the mitzvah of taking a lulav and maybe certain requirements of the mitzvah of lulav are there for the mitzvah of HaTorah, but they're not part of the definition of lulav. Let's say. So maybe all the Rabbanon require.
Some things are what are
maybe
in the
like
rice structure, but not in what.
Well, I'm trying to say, and we're getting a little off the topic.
It's fine.
But I just want to give you an intuition. So let's not belabor it. But what I'm basically trying to say is, perhaps certain aspects of the requirements midoraisa. Just give me one second. Binyamin, sorry. Maybe certain aspects of the requirements for lulav aren't part of don't make it a lulav, but they make it a kosher lulav midoraisa. And maybe all the Chachamim took was they said you need to take a lulav. They don't need all the requirements of the doraisa for the Rabbanon. You know, I'm just trying to give you a sense of what it could be.
The doraisa definition is tighter, it's stricter.
Exactly.
Okay.
But maybe all they said was as long as you have a chefza of a lulav midoraisa, that's what you need to take for the Rabbanon.
Okay.
But it's just going a little bit on a tangent, but that's what you could say. Sorry, Ben, what were you saying?
Kind of like Lulav HaGazal, if you're going according to the reason of because it says Kaptam Lachem.
Right.
So the first day it has to be yours.
Right.
But the rest of the 7, the Rabban never said that.
Exactly. So
you
that's
just need to have the actual lulav.
Right. That's exactly what the Gemara is going to get into right now. So that's a perfect segue. Let's get back to the Gemara. Okay. So the Gemara says like this. So you know what? Let's just read Rashi. I mean, it's the point that we just basically pointed out.
Have you been pairing against her?
All right, so let's get back to Rashi. So I'm just going to read Rashi, and this is basically just the point that we made. Rashi losh nabi yom tov rishon dechayuve midoraisa. Right, so there's no difference between the first day where the chiyuv is doraisa, and I'm continuing in Rashi losh nabi yom tov sheni the lesei b'natilas lulav, which doesn't have natilas lulav el midrabanan, except as a chiyuv midrabanan. The biyom harishon ksiv, right, that it's only doraisa on the first day because it says yom harishon. Right, it's everything we just said. All right, so let's get back to the Gemara. So the Gemara is going to raise a problem now, right? So the Gemara.
Wait, hold on. So the other 6.
Yeah, I should clarify. The guys made a good point. Back in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, back then, there was no mitzvah to take the lulav midrabanan if you weren't in the anywhere. No mitzvah at all if you weren't in the Beis Hamikdash. So let me say it again. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, it's doraisa on the first day everywhere, and doraisa in the Mikdash the rest of the 7 days. And those other 7, the rest, the remaining 6 days, if you're not in the Mikdash, no mitzvah at all. Nowadays, we've been talking about this mitzvah midrabanan of lulav the rest of the time. So David pointed out, he's right, it's zeicher l'mikdash. We're only doing it because of a zeicher to what they did in the Beis HaMikdash when it was Kayam. Okay? Okay, good point. Alright, so let's go on the Mishnah. The Gemara makes a conclusion now, right? So it says, it pointed out, it inferred, there's no difference between the first day and the second day, but that's going to present the problem. Okay? What's the problem? So Bishlama Hayavesh, so that's good in terms of the case of Hayavesh, that there's no difference between the first day and the rest of the days. Hadar ba'inan veleka, right? Because you need Hadar. And the Gemara is assuming, apparently, that the requirement for Hadar, and it's a little tricky, because the requirement of Lachem, the Gemara is assuming is only on the first day.
Because it says in Pasuk, Lachem b'yom
Yom Harishon, creates Hadar. So
no, but then
first it stops. Yom Harishon,
it's
stop.
take for you
Right.
first day, and then it tells you what you should
creates Hadar afterwards.
Yeah.
So some Rishonim learn that way, that they say because the Hadar comes after the Yom Harishon, the Hadar refers to
going
everything.
on pre-AIDS Hadar.
Right.
The pre-AIDS should be Hadar.
Right. So the tricky thing is that in terms of the pshat of the pasuk, it's really one long phrase. It's you shall take on the first day a pre-Eitz Hadar. So it's a little funny-ish to say that even though it's true, the Hadar comes. It's true, the Hadar comes after the Yom Harishon, but it's really part of the phrase which is talking about the first day. But some Rishonim do learn that way in terms of kind of the method of darshaning. They say since it's after the words Yom Harishon, it refers to all the days. I don't want to get into it so heavily, but I'm just making an observation that the Gemara is assuming that Hadar here is a requirement on all the days. And apparently, since it was required all the days min HaTorah, even in the Mikdash, the Rabbana would also include the requirement for Hadar even in their mitzvah, for the rest of the 7 days. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
No,
very good? Okay. So, Hadar b'yin veleka, right? So that's the Gemara's assumption, that Bishlama, Hayavesh is good, because for all the days, whether it's the first day or the rest of the days, Yom Sheni doesn't mean specifically the second day, it means any time after the first day. So, Hayavesh is good that it's equal between whether it's the first day or the rest of the days, because the issue that's at the heart of the psul of Hayavesh is Hadar, which equally applies to the whole Yontif. Ela Gazel, but Gazel, Bishlam Yom Tov Rishon Dechsiv Lachem Mishel Lachem. Right, so the Gazel, I understand why it's possible on the first day, because you need it to be Lachem on the first day. Ela B'Yom Tov Amayla, but what's the problem on the second day? Why should Gazel be a problem? And here's where the Gemara goes into the question of is it because it's not yours? Is it because it's stolen? And there's a whole amud of Gemara here that gets into it. All right, so let's see Rashi. The real reason I wanted to get to this Gemara, it's a little funny that I just stopped after 2 lines because the whole real main part of the Gemara comes afterwards, but I wanted to see the Rashi, Bishlam Hayavesh, okay? So Rashi says like this, Bishlam Hayavesh, right? This is the line of the Gemara which had said that Yavesh, I understand why it's equally possible the whole time, because you need Hadar, right? So let's see Rashi. Rashi says, Bishlam Hayavesh, Pasal B'Derabanan Nami. Right, so I understand why Yavesh is possible by the Derabanan case, the rest of the Yantif, the Derabanan days as well. Kivan the mitzvah, right? Since those days it's a mitzvah too, right? Mishum Zechel Mikdash, right? So those days it's a mitzvah midrabanan. Why is it a mitzvah midrabanan? So like David pointed out, it's Zechel Mikdash, right? Since it's a mitzvah midrabanan, mitzvahs have a halacha of hidur from Zekili Vanveyu, which Rashi pointed out back on the Mishnah, and he says here, but you don't hidur mitzvah, right? So the pasuk of Zekili Vanveyu says that whenever you have a mitzvah, you need hidur mitzvah. So the rest of the 7 days of Yantif, it's a mitzvah. It's true that it's midrabanan, but nonetheless it's a mitzvah. So you should need hidur mitzvah. All right, you guys good?
Yeah. To be honest, I need to recap my mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Drifted.
Okay. Do you want me to just kind of do a quick summary?
Oh, no, just like literally just
this very last thing? Okay. Okay, sure. So Rashi says Yavesh is pasul, and the Gemara was okay with that. Why? Because Yavesh being pasul equally on the first days and all the other days makes sense, because the first day is a mitzvah of taking the lulav midoraisa. The rest of the days is also a mitzvah. It's true that it's midorabanan, but it's a mitzvah of zeichel mikdash. But the point is, it's a mitzvah, and anytime you have a mitzvah, you have a halacha of zekeli vanveyu, of hidur mitzvah. So,
like, as its essential element, or
what do you mean? What do you mean by essential element?
I'm saying if it's a kiyam, then
right.
Then there's no problem.
Meaning it's
now if it's defined by it, then there's a problem.
Right. Meaning, well, I don't know if you have to see. I don't know if I would put it in those terms. Meaning it's defined by it, but let's say it's necessary as a necessary component. So, well, that's how Rashi's learning this whole thing, right? That Rashi's learning that in the mitzvah of Lulav, and when I say Lulav, I mean Dal Minim. Rashi's saying that in the mitzvah of Lulav, Zekeli Vanveyu is a necessary element. Okay, and without it, your Dal Minim will be possible. Your Lulav will be possible.
Even Derabanan.
Say it again.
Even Derabanan.
Even Derabanan, exactly. Even on the Derabanan days. Okay. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Tamir? Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's basically the Shitas Rashi. Let's see. Give me 1 second here. All right, so from here, let's do Tosos. How was it Tosos? Tosos you guys said was tricky, right?
Yeah.
Prepare? Yeah? Okay. All right, so you want me to read it? Might be helpful. You guys want to take a crack at it, or?
I'll try it.
You want to try it?
I took a crack at it.
No? It wasn't
I understood some of it, but I didn't
get the whole gist? Okay.
I didn't get where he was going with it.
Got it. Okay. All right, let's make it easy. And again, let's stop kind of at the point where we let's go only as far as we need to go. So let's basically do the first 4 or 5 lines. All right. So B'yam is going to read it, so we'll be a little less ambitious than we have to, and maybe it'll make it less daunting.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
Lulav Yavesh Pasol Umefarish B'Gemara. Same time Mishum Iskish Lulav Va'esor. It compares.
Iskish means it's not exactly compares. It means more like connects. Okay.
Connects to Tasson. Tichsiv Bay Hadar. It says by Hadar.
Okay. Time out. Let's stop. I'm going to pop over and just do that Gemara right now so we see what he's talking about. Okay? But the basic point, you want to just summarize the first line again?
The reason why Lulav Yavesh is puzzled,
right,
is because the Gemara connects Lulav and Esrog because it says Hadar by it.
Right. Well, I don't know if I'd say because it says Hadar, but the point is that, right, we talked about this pasuk before. What's the pasuk's description of Esrog? You guys remember? Pre-Eitz Hadar. Exactly. Right, so it's called Esrog. Whoa, it's going to sound pretty bad on tape. The pasuk calls Esrog a beautiful fruit, right? And Chazal say it's not just like a descriptive term. Right? I mean, in terms of the basic pshat of the pasuk, it's a way of identifying which fruit it is. And Esrog is a beautiful tree, so it's a way of identifying it. But the way we have a Torah Sheba'al Peh that it doesn't just mean that; it also means that the actual specific object of the fruit that you take has to be like a beautiful one, as opposed to like an ugly one, right? So, and the Gemara, so that's true of Esrog, right? Esrog, we can understand, it says pre-Eitz Hadar, and there's a connection, right? Lulav and Esrog are right next to each other in the pasuk, right? All the minim are next to each other, right? We said before, pre-Eitz Hadar, Kapos Tamarim, right? So just like Esrog has to be beautiful, Lulav as well has to be beautiful. Okay, that's the Gemara. I'm just going to bounce over. The Gemara's on Lamed Aleph, I'm just going to read it quickly so you guys see it, okay? You guys want to look at it, or you guys want to listen to me? Whatever. Either way. If you want to look at it, it's... where is it?
I got it.
You got it? Where is it?
It's where is it?
No, Lamed Aleph.
No. I got it's like a
Lamed.
What you said? Lamed Aleph.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lamed
Lamed Aleph, Lamed Aleph. Is it? Let's say. Let's.
Oh,
just,
Lamed Aleph.
Oh yeah, Lamed Aleph, Lamed Aleph. It's the truth is it's in both places. You probably saw one of them. I'm gonna do the other one. Lamed Aleph is the one I showed you. I guys told you to prepare.
Yeah, that's what I was.
That was the one you saw, right? Let's just read that one quickly.
right
Actually,
here.
you guys see it? It's Amar Rabbi Ami.
Yeah.
Right, this is. Let me. I'll go back. I'll read this one first on Lamed Amud Aleph 30a, and then I'll read 31a. 31a is a little more explicit in terms of the hour issue, but I'll just read both quickly. Right. So 38 is like this. Amar Rabbi Ami. It's about. Well, let's say what? A little more than halfway down, towards the end of the line. Amar Rabbi Ami. Hayavesh pasul b'nei she'ein hadar. Hayavesh is pasul because it's not hadar. Okay, that's all that Gemara is. That's simple. But the Gemara really expands on it on Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph. And let's go from, I'm just going to read quickly. And again, this is all just in service of understanding what Tosfos was referencing. When Tosfos said that the pasuk by Esrog says it needs to be Hadar, beautiful, and it compares Lulav to Esrog. So the Gemara says, where is it?
Tana Hayavesh pasul.
I'm just going to go from, where's Tana Hayavesh pasul? I'm going to go from, let's do that. That's good. So Tana Hayavesh pasul, Rabbi Yehuda Machshir. Right, so it's again on this summit also a little bit more than halfway down. Second word of the line is Tana. First word of the line is dummy. So Tana Hayavesh pasul. Right, so this is a brisa. Right, you see it, Dylan? You got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tana Hayavesh pasul. So Hayavesh is pasul. That's the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda Machshir. Rabbi Yehuda, we didn't see him in our Mishnah, but he is a shita of the Tanoim. He holds that Hayavesh is kosher. Okay, fine. Machlokes Tanoim. That happens. Okay, we hold like the Chachamim. Pretty much, universally, everybody holds that way. But it's a machlokes. Okay. Amar Rava. So right, that's machlokes Tanoim. Rava's an Amora. He comes along later, and he's kind of trying to explain this machlokes Tanoim, and he says like this: Amar Rava, machlokes belulav. Machlokes is by lulav, right? So the implication is by esrog they would agree, but they're arguing only by lulav. But a dried out esrog, he's saying would be okay. Okay. So there are Rabbanan savrei makshinon lulav leesrog. The Rabbanan hold we compare or really connect, right? We connect lulav to esrog. Ma esrog ba'i hadar, af lulav ba'i hadar, right? Just like esrog requires hadar, right? And why do we know? How do we know that esrog requires hadar? Why is that such a good assumption? Creates hadar, right? That's the pasuk. This is what Rashi says. It's the third of the wide lines in Rashi. Ma esrog ba'i hadar, right? That's the pasuk by esrog creates hadar, right?
What's the machlokes?
The machlokes is a dried out lulav, let's say, is a dried out lulav kosher or not, right? So we've been assuming the whole time. Our Mishnah said that a dried out lulav is pasul.
Right.
Rabbi Yehuda argues. Rabbi Yehuda says a dried out lulav is kosher. Right. So what's the basis? So Rava basically says like this. Rava says everybody really agrees that a dried out esrog that would be a problem. Rabbi Yehuda, even Rabbi Yehuda, the Makil, even he would agree a dried out esrog would be pasul. Why is it so obvious? Rashi says, right? Rashi says the pasuk says. Creates other. You can't go against the pasuk, right? But the question, the machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda, is whether there's like a connection, a comparison made between esrog and lulav. Okay. You guys got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So Tosfos has a big problem with Rashi based on this Gemara. You guys know what it is? No. All right. So let's see it in Tosfos. Okay. So Tosfos, back in the Tosfos that you were reading, Binyamin, right? So far he says that lulav Hayavesh is pasul, like the Gemara says that it connects.
So it doesn't really explain why it connects.
That's true. It doesn't explain why it does or doesn't connect, right? And the truth is, if you keep going all the way down in that Gemara, it ends up saying that they argue even by esrog. It rejects the premise at this step of the Gemara. But we don't need to see that whole Gemara. I'm trying to keep it simple. But you're right. I mean, you make a very fair point. It would really be our job if we were learning that Gemara and that was our focus to try to figure out what's the basis of the machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda. Why would you or wouldn't you say? Why would you learn the Torah to be connecting them versus learning it to not be connecting them? Not our area, but very good point. But to the point that Tosfos is going to pick up on is a different point. So Tosfos again said. So let's go back to Tosfos. Tosfos said that that lulav Hayavesh is pasul, right? So our Mishnah is according to the Chachamim, right? Not Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is the one who said pasul. This Mishnah is the Chachamim, right? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. So and Rashi explained the Chachamim Right? He said exactly Vanveyu, right? So Tosfos says like this: Mefarish b'Gemara mishum de'iskash lulav le'esrog k'dechsiv behada. Right? So the Gemara says that the question of whether lulav yavesh is pasul is because, or let's say the sheet that holds lulav yavesh is pasul is because it's compared to esrog, and esrog it says hadar. Right? Dylan, you there? Kind of in and out.
Yeah. No, they have the gist. They have the gist. No, just the side point.
You want to?
No, we're good.
You good?
Let's go.
Okay. So Tosfos gonna have a problem with Rashi. You want to keep going, Binyamin?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look to Kamala Shapir Shakondus, and I'll like Rashi explains. Mishum Dechsid Zekeli Vanveyu. The ain Vanveyu El Lechachila. Because Vanveyu is only Lechachila. The low Mifsal Bachil. We can't make something Pulsal because of this.
Okay. So let's pause. You guys get what he's asking or not really?
You can't make something Pulsal based on Lechachila.
Say it again.
You can't make something Pulsal based on the Lechachila.
That's true. I mean, that's kind of what lechachila means, but his point really.
Lechachila means what?
Sorry.
Are you saying lechachila means can't be possible by definition?
Lechachila, by definition means that you should do it. If you should do it if you're at the outset. But if you didn't,
but
then it's okay.
It is already an if by itself, right?
Yeah, but
how is Vanveyu Lechachila?
So he's going to prove in a second that Vanveyu, that the halacha of Vanveyu, as a rule, is an issue that you have to take care of lechachila, but it doesn't passel.
It already sounds very lechachila-ish, but
what do you mean?
I'm saying like it already. I'll beautify him. Like
right.
Beautify already sounds like extra.
Right.
Like, actually, to me, I would say it screams extra. Whatever.
Right. I understand. Meaning, just the formulation of the thing itself sounds like it's the type of halacha which would be a lechachila, something you should try to do, but not something that should passel up in the average. Right, so Tosfos in a second is going to bring a proof from the Gemara that says that you're right, that Vanveyu is only lechachila. But Tosfos implicitly is really asking two questions here. Right? One question is what you guys just said, right? So one question that Tosfos has on Rashi is that Rashi, you're telling me that Zekili Vanveyu is the cause, the source of this halacha, that Yavesh is a problem. The Mishnah says pasul. Pasul means that it's not just lechachila, it means that it's a disqualifier, right? But there's really another implicit question in the Tosfos. Try to see if you can see it.
So again, the first question was what? Tosfos was asking how can what Rashi says it's lechachila.
Well, Rashi, what does Rashi say is the source for this halacha? That
creates other.
Right.
Well, Zekili Vanveyu.
Zekili Vanveyu. Right? Rashi said Zekili Vanveyu was the source of saying that you can't take a dried out lulav. But Zekili Vanveyu screams
extra, not puzzle. Can't be puzzle.
Screams that it's a halacha. That's not a posel, and yet Rashi's using that as a source to explain a halacha which openly is a posel, which is a psul. If the lulav is yavesh, bottom line is you just can't take it. Right? So Tosfos, one question Tosfos has on Rashi, and this is kind of his explicit question, is that how can you tell me that Vanveyu is the source that lulav hayavesh is the problem? Lulav hayavesh the problem is even b'di'evet, and Vanveyu is only a rule in general milacharchila. Okay? You guys get that question?
Yeah.
Right, that's question number one. But implicitly in Tosfos, there's sort of another question that he's asking.
On Rashi or
on Rashi? And Dylan, you kind of hit on it accidentally about 30 seconds ago.
With the extra?
No, right before that. What's Rashi's source for this halacha? What is the Gemara? That's why you can't.
We're saying how's it possible Rashi can darshan out from another pasuk?
Yeah, what does the Gemara say is the source for Yavesh being a problem? Other. It's other. So Rashi has this whole other source, right? There are two different things. Zekili Vanveyu is a pasuk in general. It's a general halacha by mitzvos that Rashi's saying over here is a posel.
But in the Chachila, you should really make everything should be Vanveyu.
Well, that's very true, but you can't use that. Tosfos is saying, Rashi, you can't use that to tell me that it's a posel. Rashi's using that to say that lulav is pasul if it's yavesh. How can you use that to tell me it's pasul? Vanveyu is only lechachila. And furthermore, the Gemara itself has an open hekesh. We just read it 2 minutes ago, right? The Gemara says, why, according to the Chachamim, why is lulav hayavesh pasul as opposed to Rabbi Yehuda? So the question is, do you make the comparison to Esrog?
Rashi dispute that at all?
Yeah, Rashi just goes against an open Gemara.
So maybe Rashi doesn't hold that
it's because of Vanveyu?
Is Rashi allowed to say that? That's the question. How Rashi not allowed to say that? How can he say that?
No, maybe Rashi's going according to the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda.
But Rashi's explained the Mishnah, which is the Rabbanan. Right? Because the Rabbanan are the ones who say it's pasul. Right? That would all work out very well. That really, it's just Rabbi. He's explaining Rabbi Yehuda, and he's only going to Chachila, except he's explaining a Mishnah which is openly the other way. So it's a good thought, but it just doesn't correspond to the facts of what he's explaining.
Rashi has to hold of HaTorah also.
Well, if the Gemara says it, Rashi can't argue with the Gemara. So here's the situation. The Mishnah says that lulav hayavesh is pasul, right? Rashi says, why is lulav hayavesh pasul? because there's a pasuk of Zekeli Vanveyu, right? But the Gemara itself, one daf later, explains Zek. You okay there? Okay.
Yeah, just let me.
Okay. So the Gemara itself says, let me start again. I feel like I broke my train of thought, right? The Mishnah says, okay. So again, let's summarize, right? So Lulav, the Mishnah says the Rabbanon hold Lulav Hayavesh is puzzle.
Yeah,
right?
puzzle.
Puzzle. Okay. L'chachil or b'diavad?
Wait, who?
The Mishnah. Puzzle.
Yeah, but
How do we know it's b'diavad?
B'diavad.
Well, puzzle means b'diavad.
Yeah.
Puzzle. That's what puzzle means.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
If it wanted to l'chachil, it would say don't do it. Right?
Like usher?
It would say, like, yeah, ain, lane, yeah, lo, aser lo, likach, lulav hayavesh or something, you know, or lo yikach lulav yavesh, you know. But it says puzzle means it's just bottom line no good, right? So these are facts. So the Mishnah says it's puzzle even b'diavad. Rashi says the source of that halacha is Zekeli Vanveyu. The Gemara later says the source of this Shita's halacha, the Mishnah is Priyat Hadar. Tosfos says to Rashi, I have two problems with you. Number one, you tell me the source of this Mishnah that Yavesh is a problem because of Hadar, is Zekeli Vanveyu, but the Gemara itself has a different pasuk of Priyat Hadar. And furthermore, you're telling me it's Zekeli Vanveyu, that's always a halacha milachachila, but whereas this halacha is even b'diavad a problem. Okay? Two questions. You guys see the difference between the two?
Yeah.
Okay. And the next line, I'll just skim through the next line. Tosfos is just the next line is he's bringing a source to show. He says he's proving basically that Vanveyu as a rule is only l'chachila. He says kivemuchach parakama, right, as it's evident in the first parak of our Masechta, the Amir Rabbanan Lula mitzvah la'agdo mishum shenemar zekeli Vanveyu.
You should tie it.
You should tie up. Yeah, you should tie up your lulav.
But if you don't, it's
But if you don't, it's kosher. Why should you tie it up? Mishum shenemar zekeli Vanveyu. Right? So this is a classic case of Vanveyu, right? It's not the only one, right? There are other cases of Vanveyu too, but he's bringing just one sample case, Tosfos, right? So you have halacha Vanveyu to tie up your lulav, right? It's like what we do, right? We put those ties around the lulav. So that's because of Hidur, right? But if you don't do it, it's open halacha that it's okay, which means clearly Vanveyu is a l'chachil thing. So it just proves what we said before. But basically, Tosfos has two problems with Rashi. So what would Tosfos say? Tosfos would say very simply, what's the source for this halacha that lulav yavesh is possible? Priyat Hadar, right? The way the Gemara says, right? Gets out of your problem. He's like the Gemara, and it's a requirement to the pasuk, which means there's no reason it can't be a problem even b'diavad, right? That's just a psul, right? Dylan, you good?
Yeah.
Yeah. David, okay. All right. So that's the two problems that Tosfos has on Rashi, right? Rashi was a pretty intelligent guy, right? So we know that he knew this Gemara because on Lamed Aleph and Aleph we read this Gemara, and Rashi is the one who commented on it, saying that he said that Esrog is a problem because of Hadar, like it says in the pasuk. So it's not like Rashi somehow didn't have this Gemara, right? Rashi saw this Gemara, and he's not an idiot. He knew the Gemara back in the first paragraph that Tosfos just quoted. He knew that Vanveyu is only a l'chachila halacha. So Rashi, it's not like Rashi just kind of glossed over these problems. He must have had some way that he would respond to Tosfos, right? So our first question, really, it's two questions, right? Is how would Rashi respond to Tosfos' question number one, and how would Rashi respond to Tosfos' question number two? Okay. And they'll probably be related, the ways that he would respond, right? It's a lot of times it happens like that, but there's kind of one answer that explains all the questions. So, but basically questions 1 and 2 are how would Rashi respond to the issue of using the wrong pasuk, and how do you respond to the issue of l'chachila versus b'diavad? We're going to kind of take a little bit of a circuitous route back to these questions through the Rambam. Okay? The Rambam is going to be our shortcut to Rashi, in a way. Okay, I think after learning through the sugya, and this is me, and again the people I was learning with, we kind of thought that Rashi and the Rambam have a similar shita. Okay, just kind of seeing the way they're approaching it. So we're going to look at the Rambam. We didn't know it going in, but we'll see the Rambam, and we'll see if we can kind of tackle some of the issues in the Rambam, and hopefully that'll help us with Rashi. Okay, you guys good?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go. You guys have the Rambams printed out. Let's go to the Rambam in Hilchos Shofar v'Sukkah v'Lulav, Parak Ches. Okay. Give me 1 sec. Let me open it up. Okay, do you guys get a chance to look at this at all, or not really?
No.
No? Okay. You guys want me to read it, or does somebody want to be daring?
I'll try reading.
Try it? Okay. All right, take a shot. Go ahead.
Arba meaning lulav hadas for arba ve'estrog. These are 4 species, and they're lulav, behadas, yarav, and estrog. Shaya achad mehen yavesh, that each one of them is dry. O gazel, or it's stolen, or o ganov, R was another kind of stolen.
Right.
Afilu la'achar yeyush, and even after it was the person gave up hope.
Mm-hmm.
Osh dahayam mishera hana havadas afal pish v'talu ha'ashara mila avoda. That it was, I don't know, what's me'ashara?
It's me'ashera, from one of those trees. Hayavesh. Yeah.
Hana even though that it's batal, the ashira is still.
Well, he's saying like this: Aval pisha batlu ha'ashera mila avda, meaning even though they're no longer worshiping this ashera tree, it's still going to be a problem, right? The lulav came from that tree.
Oshahaya shal Basar wasn't Irinidachas. How is that base puzzle?
The base is just a footnote to you said the base.
Okay. Yeah, that's like
Hari's up. Yeah, I know. Hari's a puzzle.
Right, so it's puzzle.
All right, let's recap. Let's skip everything we don't care about for our purposes. Rambam holds Lulav Hayavesh is
Puzzle.
good. That's all we need for now. All right, go ahead, keep going.
Hay acha mehen shel avodah zara lo yitol lechachila v'im natal yosei.
Okay.
If he from avodah zara, if he did lechachila, or he took it with natal.
Well, he shouldn't take it. Natal means to take. So he shouldn't take it lechachila.
You shouldn't take it, but if he did, he's yosei.
He's yotze. Okay, fine. Not our issue. We'll skim over it.
He was what? Yavesh's puzzle.
Well, Yavesh's puzzle, right?
And then what's it?
Something that we're not going to use.
All right.
All right. But the next thing we're going to use. All right. Lock in. Let's go.
Haya kamosh.
Haya kamosh.
Haya kamosh. Below gamar levash kasher.
So kamosh means it's like starting to dry out. I'm not sure exactly what the right word is. Maybe you guys know. Like it's sort of like
That in between stage.
yeah, it's like dry a little bit, but not really fully dry. Okay.
Okay.
There's some word for it in English, I'm sure, but
Transcending. I don't know.
I don't know if that's it. But there's some word in English. All right.
Okay, fine.
Some word for that type of dryness. I don't know what that word is, but fine. So in that case, if it's like kind of half dry but not yet really dried out, so then it's kosher. Okay.
Okay.
I got it.
Below gamar levash.
That's what you just read.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
B'shas ha'chag, in a pressing situation. Oh, b'shas ha'sakana, or in a dangerous situation. Lulav hayavesh kadra. Lulav, it's dried out, is kosher. Avalo sha'ar hamina, but not the other type of species.
So not the
Not the
esrog and the
esrog,
hadas and the rabba. Okay. So here's what the Rambam says for our purposes. Lulav hayavesh is possible. If you're in a dangerous or like a shas al-chak where you can't find a not dry lulav, then a dry lulav is kosher, right? But that's true only of lulav and not of the other dalad miyam.
Say it again.
So dry lulav is possible, right? But if you're in a situation, a shas al-chak, you ever hear that term, shas al-chak? Shas al-chak basically means that like it's like a pressing situation where basically means you can't find a good lulav, a lulav that's not dried out. Basically, it's all you have. You can only get one lulav. You live in the middle of nowhere, or whatever. The only lulav you can get is this dried out lulav. In that case, you can use it. Okay, that's the Rambam.
I mean, is he creating a new category of b'diavad now? Is it super b'diavad, or this is b'diavad? Is he describing what a b'diavad situation is?
Right. So it's not a b'diavad situation. B'diavad and shas al-chak are two different things. B'diavad means like if you did it, whether or not it's a shas al-chak. B'diavad would be even if you could get another lulav, but you did it, that would be called like a b'diavad situation. Shas al-chak is a different category. It means it's all you can get, basically. Okay, you have a question, Jacob?
Yeah, what does it mean when it says sakana here?
That's a good question. I guess maybe it means to go get another lulav, you'd have to like go through like a dangerous area or something like that. You know what I mean? Dylan, you coming back?
You got 45 seconds.
Okay. All right, you guys good?
Yeah, what do you word Yahush mean?
Well, let me just pause it. Okay, so how you guys feel? Like it's hot, cold? What do you guys feel?
I'm fine.
You good? Okay. All right, so the Rambam actually didn't make up this halacha about the shas al-chak. Thankfully, it's actually back in the Gemara, and it was I think the last of the sources that I gave you guys on Lamed Aleph. Lamed Aleph in the Mishnah in the Gemara, towards the bottom, is the source for this halacha about shas al-chak. Okay, right? So again, you guys need another recap of the Rambam's facts, or you guys are good?
No, I got the Rambam.
Good. Okay. So the source for this halacha in the Rambam is towards the bottom on Lamed Aleph, and it says like this. It's kind of in the middle of a whole back and forth between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, but I'm just going to kind of pick up in the middle. Okay? I think I told you guys from V'hatanya.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So V'hatanya, the word as a rule, when it says V'hatanya, means that it's introducing a brisa to ask a question. But I don't really care about the way it's using the brisa, I just want to see the brisa. Alright, Dylan, we're going back to the Rambam source in the Gemara. That's all you missed. Okay? So Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph at the bottom. Okay, V'hatanya, somewhere down here. There. Okay? So we're going to see the Rambam's source for the halacha that a lulav and a sha'as hadchak, even if it's dried out, is okay. Okay?
That what?
That a lulav that's dried out is possible, but if it's in a situation where it's all you have, the Rambam says that's okay. Right? So what's the Rambam's source? It's this Gemara that we're going to look at. Okay?
Yeah.
So he says like this. So it's a brisa, and it says like this. V'hatanya, arba'as minin shebelulav, the dalad minim, kishem she'en pochas in mehen, kach ein mosifan alein. Right? So you can't take any fewer minim, and you can't take any extra minim. It's these four. You can't take an apple, and you can't take on top of them, and you can't take only 3 of them without taking the hadassim or whatever. Right? No more, no less. Lo matzah esrog. If you couldn't get an esrog, let's say like esrog more hard to come by, especially let's say back then you're living all the way out in, I don't know, Bavel, maybe they didn't grow esrogim there, wherever it was, somewhere where there were no esrogim, you couldn't get it. So what do? So he says, lo yavi, lo parish, v'lo rimon, v'lo davar acher. So you shouldn't bring any other fruit in place of the esrog. Right? What the havamina is, the Gemara takes up, but let's not deal with it. It's not our question right now. Okay? Then the Gemara says, Kemushin ksherim yiveshim psulim. Okay, so this was something that the Rama mentioned, that if it's only like half dry, it's okay, and fully dry is going to be where it's a problem. Okay? And this next line is where we start to get into it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af yaveshin. Right? Rabbi Yehuda, whom we had seen before, he says that if the minim are yavesh, it's okay. Right? You guys remember that? We saw that like a few minutes ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Okay. So now we see a conversation, and this is the important part. We see a conversation between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Right? The Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Maaseh b'vnei krachin, shahayu morishin es lulaveihen lebnei b'neihen. So there's a story, we know, that people who lived in these cities where there weren't any orchards that they could find, where they couldn't get the dalad minim or whatever, so what they would do is they would bequeath, they would pass on their lulavim. You'd get a guy would get a lulav, and he would give it to his son and his grandson. It would pass through the generations to use for mitzvahs lulav, basically. Okay? Now, if you have a lulav that a guy buys in 1974 and he's passing it to his grandson in 2014, probably it's dry by now, right? That's the premise that they're taking here, right? The lulav dries out after like a week if you don't keep it refrigerated.
It's probably black.
Yeah, I think they turn white.
Broken, I don't know.
So
crumbles.
I don't think it crumbles because they were still there. But the point is, all we know is that factually is that they were dry. Okay?
A palm branch doesn't disintegrate for 40 years.
I guess if you take good care of it, probably
incredible.
not. I guess. You put it in like a nice tight box, I guess. Put it in a nice tight box so the air doesn't get to it. I guess it doesn't disintegrate so easily. But the point is that it's dry.
Sealed.
Say it again?
Vacuum sealed.
Vacuum sealed, yeah. Okay? That's the Gemara's assumption. That the point is, they had a case where the lulavim dried out. So Rabbi Yehuda says, this is a really good raya to my position that a dry lulav is okay. Because you see, people did it. Like, if people wouldn't be violating the halacha, that's his assumption. Nowadays, not as good an assumption. I guess back then, people would follow the halacha. So how could you tell me that a dry lulav is a problem, chachamim? I'm telling you it's okay. V'haraya, these people did it. They passed on their lulav from generation to generation. Okay? You get the question?
Yeah.
Yeah? David?
Yeah.
Okay. So how the Chacham going to respond? So the Chacham say like this. Amru la, there's like a little thing before lahem. Amru lo, amru lahem. Basically the Chacham responds to Rabbi Yehuda. Misham raya? From there you're going to bring me a raya? Ain shas adchak raya. Shas adchak, you can't use a shas adchak as a raya. Okay? So what's the implicit thing that the Chacham are saying? The Chacham say, you're right. In that case, I can't deny the fact that these people took the dry lulav, and yet I hold that dry lulav is a problem. So what am I saying? I say that was a case of shas adchak. So in such a case, it's okay. In the case of shas adchak. But if it's not a shas adchak, then you'll have a problem. Okay? So this is the source for the Rambam who says lulav hayavesh is puzzle, but in shas adchak it's okay. Okay? You guys good? All right. So I just wanted to bring in the fact to show you that it's from this Gemara. Okay? All right. What do you guys say about this halacha? Any questions? You good? I have a question, but if you guys want, I'll tell it to you, but I'm opening the floor if you guys have any questions about it. I have a problem with it, in other words, about this halacha in the Rambam. You want to think about it for a second, or?
No, I'm good.
No? Okay. Yaakov, Dave, you want to think about it, or? You good? You want me to just tell you what I'm thinking in terms of the problem?
Let's do it.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, Tamir?
Can you just repeat the facts?
Yeah, sure. So the facts are that lulav, a dried out lulav, is possible.
Okay.
But if it's a case where you can't get any other lulav, then it's okay.
How can you not get any other lulav?
So let's say you live out in the middle of Nebraska and there's no cars, right? And you just factually you can't get, there's no people around, you just can't get a lulav. Or there's a shortage of lulav in that year. There's a big famine or a big hurricane. All the lulav were torn off the trees and there's just not enough lulav.
Right.
Whatever the case is. So if you can't get another lulav, so then it's okay, you can take a dried out lulav. That's the fact.
Okay.
And according to the Rambam, that's true only of lulav. But the other meaning, let's say by aravos, if that happened, you still can't take a dry arava. Okay, even if you can't find
Even
a.
just enough.
What's the difference between the samanim then?
Say again.
What's the difference between the different
The different meaning. So
yeah.
lulav, if you can't find another one, you can take a dry one.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
get that.
why?
Like, why is it differentiated?
Oh, why is it differentiated? So that's a good question. I actually have two questions. That's one of my questions. So in learning, I feel like there's two different types of questions, right? This is kind of like a methodological point. And like when I was learning, like in high school and in yeshiva, so we referred to them by two different names. We called one a she'ela and one a kushya, like a kasha. You guys ever hear this or not really?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Nope.
Okay. So I'll refresh. So at least the way I use it. So she'ela, the way I've always used it, means like a search for information. Like if the Gemara is the Mishnah asks, like the first Mishnah, the Mishnah in Shas, says, when can you say Kriya Shema? So the Tanam are asking, I don't know, when can you say Kriya Shema? So it's just basically seeking information. You're starting with a lack of information, and as Sheila, you're seeking information. Okay? That's one type of question, right? The other type of question is what I call a kasha, right? Kasha is the same word as kasha, like difficult. It's a difficulty. When do you read Shema? There's no difficulty there. It's just, we don't know. When do you do it? Tell us, The other kind of questions, when you see, like the kind you see in the Gemara all the time. How can you say this? So you have a brisa that contradicts, those kind of questions where basically it boils down to what you're saying contradicts either some other source or some logical principle, it leads to some internal contradiction. Any type of problem question is what I would call a kasha. Okay, you guys see the difference? Yeah. So the question that Tamir asked, right? Why is there a difference between lulav and the other minim? It's not really a kushya. The Torah could differentiate between the minim if it wants to, but there should be some sense to it. You know what I mean? It's not really like a contradiction. There's no problem, like per se, with one being different from the others. But we really should try to understand why should lulav be different from the other minim, right? That's basically what you're asking, right? Yeah. So I think that's a great question, right? I have that question too. So that's one question. But I also have a different question, another question. But let's say that's question number 3 so far in the sheet, right? Let's recap. Question number 1 and 2 were Tosfos' questions on Rashi. How does Rashi respond to both of those? Right? And when we deal with it, we'll remember what those were, if you can't remember off the top of your head. And now our question number 3 is, why does the Rambam differentiate for the purpose of the halacha of Shas Adchak? Why does he say it's true only of lulav and not of the other minim? Right? If you can't get an arava, if the only arava you have is a dry out arava, you still can't use it for the mitzvah. Okay? That's our question number 3. Right?
Maybe because it's not the ikr of the mitzvah?
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know.
No, keep going.
I'm just that's all I got.
All you got.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's a good approach, good way to start thinking about it. I'll tell you what gets a little tricky about it is there's a lot of psulim by the Daled Minim, right? We saw a bunch of them, right? If it's stolen is another one. If part of it is cut off, So you can have those things by the other Minim too. You can have a stolen arava, you could have the top of the arava chopped off, right? You can have the leaves of the arava falling off. So those are also psulim, but they're true not only of lulav, they're true of all of the Minim. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I guess what I'm saying is, it's true that in a certain sense, lulav is the ikar, but it's not the case that by all these halachos, we say, oh, lulav is the ikar, so it only applies to lulav. So it's a good way to start thinking about it, but I'd say from that first step, the next question would be, well, okay, lulav is the ikar, but why should it be that its ikarness makes a difference only in terms of this specific case? You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's good, but it's good first step, a good way to start thinking about it at least.
Okay.
I have another question on the Rambam, though. You guys want to think about it a little bit more, like in terms of what the Rambam's saying, or you want me to just say what I'm thinking about?
I'm down for you to say it.
Down for me to say it? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Alright, so let me present a premise, which I think you guys will already accept, but let me just make sure that we're on the same page in terms of this premise, because my question is based on a premise. So it's like kind of like a Torah learning premise. So my assumption, in terms of the way that the Torah, saying God, sets up halachos, is that it's like a logical, categorical system, which I assume you've kind of already been exposed to, kind of in your learning with Rabbi Ginsburg, So, but I'll give an example, just to kind of segue in to what I mean, right? If I was to make a rule, a certain rule that the person has to walk outside, whatever, every day, you know? And I said, a person has to walk outside every day, but not on Tuesdays, you know? So there's no inherent contradiction in anything I've said, right? Like there's no kusha, kind of what we were talking about a minute ago. But there's no sense in it. I mean, unless there is a sense. If there is, then you have to tell me what it was, you know? But it's like arbitrary, you know? Like a person, like chess, almost in a way. Chess has rules, but maybe I don't know chess very well. I mean, I know the rules, but maybe I don't understand why the rules are the way they are. To me, it seems like the rules are sort of arbitrary. But the assumption is that the way the Torah sets up its rules, they're not arbitrary, and they're kind of perfectly logical and categorical. Okay? You guys accept that, Rabbi?
Yeah.
Dylan, maybe?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Let's take it? Okay. Yeah, David?
Yeah.
Come here? Yeah, okay. So if the Torah's rules are perfectly logical and categorical, so here's our case, right? Let me just make sure I'm going in the order I wanted to go in here. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, if that's true, that the Torah is, like the way it sets up its mitzvahs, are logical and categorical, so I ask you like this. In the case of a psul by Lulav, right? And the Daled medium in general, right? So you have a psul of Yavesh. You can't pick it up if it's Yavesh. So if I was to kind of state if you were to state, let's start with you guys. If you were to state in kind of logical, categorical terms, we'll give it a shot. What does that mean about Yavesh in terms of Lulav? You guys want to try to like formulate it?
Yeah, question again.
How would you formulate? My question is like this: how would you formulate logically, like the problem of Yavesh by Lulav? I'm not sure if I'm
No,
putting it out.
It's an inherent psil, perhaps?
Say it again?
It's an inherent psil?
An inherent psul?
Yeah.
Like in the Lulav? You want to try to expand on that a little bit? 1 second, Bill?
No.
No? Okay.
No, you said before, necessary element.
Necessary element, that's okay, that's true. I think that's kind of similar to what you're
I
saying.
don't know if I'll call it hitter, I'll say it's non-dry. I'll say non-dry.
Non-dry.
And therefore dry violates it. And therefore you...
Well, let's expand on that a little bit. Let's talk about it a little bit more, because let's start to move a little bit. When you say non-dry, let's put that in a sentence. Let's not say just the words non-dry. What about non-dry?
The bullet point's very, very crisp. Very crisp.
Let's make it a sentence now. Let's do it. Everybody.
Prepositions too.
Anything you want.
Okay.
Verbs,
Okay.
conjunctions, anything is good. Interjections. What about non-dry? Non-dry is just 2 words. Let's tell me something about non-dry.
Brown.
No, not. I don't mean like
Smells.
describe it, but I mean what non-dry. What's the relevance of non-dry? Non-dry is what here? Non-dry is
Category?
a category. That's true.
Is in the idea behind non-dry? Well, violates...
No,
it's not hitter.
It's not hither, right? That we know. Okay.
I'm not.
It's hard for me to push.
No, I'm not seeing that. Like the flashlight's on, but I don't see the hole you want me to look down right now.
Okay.
No, I don't see the hole.
I hear you. Here's basically where I'm going with this. I mean, you guys are kind of things sort of, I think, towards the right direction in terms of the way I'm seeing it, at least.
Okay.
But what I mean is like this: Lulav, the issue, like the problem of Lulav being dry. What does it mean? It means that the entity is disqualified, right? When the entity is dry, now this entity, this object of the Lulav, is a disqualified entity. Right? I'm not saying rocket science. I'm just trying to
It's not.
kind of try to just put it in like sort of clear, what I would call like brisker-ish kind of terms, you know? Let's like view in logical categories. What does it mean when the Lulav is dry? It means there's a disqualification in the entity. The entity is disqualified. Okay? You guys, is that a safe proposition?
Safe.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So now I'll ask you. I live in the middle of Nebraska, and there was a big famine and a big hurricane, and there are no lulavim except dry ones. If it's the case that what I just said is true, that a lulav is a disqualified entity, so it's very nice that I'm in this unfortunate situation.
But who cares?
But who cares?
Right.
Where's the majority?
Ready.
1 second.
Where does the Patur emerge from for the very bad case? Forgot this right.
Shasat Chak?
Yeah. Where does the Patur emerge from?
That's not bad.
I think Ginsburg might his nefesh might be right here.
Not exactly how I would put it. I don't know if the words are exactly right to the situation, but you're thinking of the right idea, basically.
Okay. Wait, no, but why not? Why isn't it right?
Well, Dylan said that he kind of formulated it saying, where's the Patur emerge from? So I was saying, I think the sharper way to say it a little bit is not where's the Patur or where's the allowance emerge from, but rather, how can you have the allowance, right? The bottom line is this is a disqualified entity. You guys told me that you guys agreed with that formulation, right?
Give me a rule,
now it's
give
on
me
you.
an asterisk. How
Right?
does that work? You gave me a rule and then you gave me an answer.
Yeah, exactly. Bottom line is, if you're setting up a logical system, it can't really have any kind of any exception has to find a way that it fits into the system. It can't just be stam. Here's your logical rule, and then in one case it just doesn't apply. What about the rule? Logic is logic. If it's a disqualified entity, it just shouldn't be good. Very nice. And you'll tell me, what is the guy supposed to do?
Right.
Like the guy, he can't find what should he do?
Right. It's like we need to establish a meta principle.
So what can the guy do if he's shas al-chak, he can't find another lulav? So the Torah has a principle for that kind of situation. There's a principle. It's called anus rachmana patre. You guys ever hear that? So anus means that it means he's forced into a situation. It means if he can't help it, basically. So there's a general rule in Torah. If a guy can't help it, so rachmana is used to mean either to refer to God or to the Torah. So let's say the Torah. If he's anus, if he's in a forced situation where he can't help it, the Torah patered him. So it's not that he can take the dried out. It shouldn't be the case that he can take the dried out lulav and be yotze with it. Just tell me he's pater from the mitzvah altogether. Right? Those are two different things. There's a difference between saying he's just pater from the mitzvah and saying he can do the mitzvah with his dried out lulav. Right? You see how those are two different different things. So the Torah shouldn't make up this rule that it's a disqualified entity, but somehow in a case of shas al-chak, you can do it. Just tell me. Use the general rule of anus rachmana patre. So Tamir was asking. So what happens by hadas and arava? Right? If it's shas al-chak and you can't find one that isn't dry, so it will be like we were just saying. If you can't find a non-dry hadas, don't take a hadas. And you're pater. You're pater from taking a hadas. It's anus. That's the category in the Torah. Anus. You can't help it. So you're pater. What happens if it's sukkah and it's raining? And you can't go in the sukkah. You're pater. Go inside. Some cases you're just pater.
Right. It's not that your house is yotzei sukkah.
Right. Exactly.
How is it that you take the lulav, but you can't take the other four? What mitzvah are you fulfilling? You're just supposed to take all four.
That's a separate question. Can you take some of the minim and not all the minim?
Yeah.
Whether you take three and not the fourth, or you're pater from the whole thing. Separate question.
Okay.
But good question. But separate. And then I'll tell you a nafkamina. You guys know the term nafkamina?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the nafkamina between, because you might tell me, well, who cares? If you're pater, you don't take it. And either way, if he picks it up, what's the nafkamina between whether he takes it up and he's yotzei or not? So the first question is when he picks, if the guy picks it up. I mean, do you guys need a nafkamina? Because you can see they're kind of different, right? One is he fulfills a mitzvah, and one he doesn't, right? Because for example, if you pick it up, do you make a bracha or not? Or are you just doing nothing? It's kind of self-evident the difference between the two, being pater and being able to take it and being yotzei, right?
Yeah.
So we have two questions on the Rambam. One was Tamir's question: why should you differentiate? Fine, Ram, you have this halacha that. Then shas al-chak, you tell me you can't take a dry lulav, but only lulav. Well, why should we make a difference between lulav and the other minim? Right? Well, again, it's a sheila. It's not really a kushya, it's a sheila. Why should we differentiate? Right? And now we have our kushya. You're going to tell me, Rambam, and really it's the Gemara, it's a question on the Gemara really, right? Because the Rambam didn't make up this halacha of shas al-chak. Everybody holds by it. It's the Gemara. Gemara, you tell me that there's an issue of a psul of Hayavesh by lulav, which means that it's a disqualified entity. So what, all of a sudden, shas al-chak is no longer a disqualified entity? How does that work?
Right, I don't have so much problem with the first side of that question. With how do we have this principle called if you're forced into it? But I agree that it's really not clean like how they say. It'd be much cleaner if they would say you're pater than to suddenly to really just transgress the category of this is not. This is not even a lulav,
right? And
then suddenly this version is a lulav. Just pater is a much cleaner altogether.
Yeah, that's really the heart of my question. That this isn't a kosher lulav. It's a disqualified entity. Right. All of a sudden, now what happened? The only reason I'm bringing in that principle of anus rachmana patre, where if you're forced to use pater, I'm just kind of bringing it in to head off a question you might ask. You might ask me, okay, so what's he supposed to do? What can he do? So I'm just saying, what can he do? He can be pater. That's what it should be. That's the only reason I'm bringing that in. You know what I mean?
The pater
principle.
I think the pater is a better question because I don't know if there's a problem with this. I met a principle called when you're we how did you online? I agree it's very tough, but I met a principle that when if you really can't do it, then there is an exception. That there is an asterisk. I have a problem with the asterisk being there.
Right.
I have a question with the quality of the asterisk. Instead of saying your pater, we get started.
That's what I'm
crazy.
asking. That's what I'm asking.
Crazy.
That's exactly what I'm asking. That how can it be that the way you're putting it is how can it be that the way that this asterisk works is that all of a sudden it was disqualified and now because you can't do it another way now it's no longer a disqualified entity. How can that be? That's really my question. That's the heart of my question. Anus rachmana patre again. I'm just bringing it in because after I ask that question, you might say to me, okay, that's a very good question. But what do you want the Torah to do? What should people do? It's telling you that you can take it. If it didn't say that it was kosher, what should a person do? So I'm telling you, he should be patur. That's the only reason I'm bringing that in. But the question the logical question I'm asking is exactly the way you're formulating it. Okay, you good? David, you following?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's recap. We got 4 questions, right? Question number 1: how can Rashi say that the source of that a dry lulav is a problem is Zekeli Vanveyu? He's openly contradicting the source of the Gemara from being from Pri Eitz. Right? That was question number 1.
Yeah.
Good. Question number 2: how can Rashi say that the source of Lulav Hayavesh, dry lulav being puzzle, is Zekeli Vanveyu? Zekeli Vanveyu only ever works l'chadchila. It only ever tells you should beautify l'chadchila. How can Rashi use it to tell you that you can't use it b'di'evet? Right? You good? Remember that one, Dylan? Yeah? Come here? More nodding, or more... Yeah? Okay. I could repeat it again if you guys want. Can I say it again?
One more time.
One more time? Second one or both?
Let's do the whole thing.
Okay, the whole thing. All right. You help me out? Focus in? Okay. Question 1. Really, it's really first 2 questions and the second 2 questions are kind of groups. Questions 1 and 2. Rashi says the source of Yavesh being a problem is Zekeli Vanveyu. Problem number 1, it's a contradiction to what the Gemara's source is. The Gemara's source is Pri Eitz. Right?
There's a Gemara rule that he can't do that.
Sorry?
And there is a Gemara rule that he cannot.
Yeah, and there's a Gemara rule that he can't contradict the source, the Gemara's source. Okay? Question number 2, that was question number 1. Question number 2, how can you tell me the source that Yavesh's puzzle is Pri Eitz is Zekeli Vanveyu? Zekeli Vanveyu only ever works l'chadchila. Shouldn't be halacha b'di'evet. Okay? Those are questions 1 and 2, right? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions 3 and 4. The Rambam says, and it's based on a Gemara, that it's true lulav Yavesh, a dry out lulav is puzzle. But if you can't help it, if it's the only one you have, you can use it. But only a lulav. It only works for lulav. If it's the same thing, if the same thing is the case you have by arava, you can't use it. You still can't use it, even if it's the only one you have. Okay? Questions 3 and 4. Why do we differentiate between lulav and the others? This is question 3. And question 4, logically, how does it go from being a disqualified entity to all of a sudden being a qualified entity just because you have no other choice? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the 4 questions. Give me 1 second. Let's go for a couple more minutes. Tomorrow we'll really try to tackle these problems if we can. But we'll just talk a little bit like methodologically. Like, where would you guys start? Just like have a discussion.
With which question?
Yeah, basically, like which questions would you guys want to tackle first? 'Cause I have an idea.
The easiest one sounds like 3.
Say it again.
Brahman's first one sounds like the easiest one. It sounds like the less kashadik and most shiladik. And I'd say
Okay.
I have a sheet that says the shiloh our years that shilohs are easier to take care of than the kashas.
Okay.
But aside from that starting point, I don't really have an actual starting point. For
Okay.
Are one of these questions going to answer all 3 questions, like all the other 3 questions? If we answer 1, will we get to
That'd
the answer
probably be the
number
most
3?
fascinating.
Well, the hope is that I'm kind of organizing it for you guys, like because you could also ask other questions.
Separate.
Well,
It's very separate.
you could also ask the other questions we didn't ask. I'm kind of setting it up for you guys. You don't always know, like when you go into a sugya, you see the questions as they come, and it's not always the case that answering one will answer the others, but a lot of the time it is. And I mean, the reason is that the thing that's producing like the inconsistency often flows through and produces multiple inconsistencies. And if you see one inconsistency and you kind of walk through the doorway that inconsistency kind of hints to you that it exists and shows you the concept that is underlying the sugya,
So all these 4
that concept will go and hit everything.
So question.
So all these 4 questions right now have something in common that we don't see right now.
They might.
Is that basically
Probably
what you're
question
saying?
4.
It's in my opinion, all these 4 questions, the problems and the inconsistencies and the curiosities underlying these 4 questions all stem from.
So I wouldn't even try
From
answering
one
the 4 questions. I try going
It's a
from.
question.
I try finding the inconsistency first, then answer the question.
Well, the inconsistencies are
You
the
want the heart of
questions.
the problem.
What?
You want the heart of the problem.
Yeah, go ahead. You want the harder problem? Go ahead.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to
it's
say. Like, go for the
probably
heart, then answer the question.
You said it's what? It all boils down to one question. You just said that.
No, well, what I'm saying is that these are 4 questions, but at least I find that in learning. Like a lot of times, like you'll do a sugya like this, and you'll see like multiple questions, and it's always kind of a consideration. So, okay, so I have these questions. Where do I start? And in terms of where to start, I find it's generally helpful to kind of pick one concentration, one question or 2 questions, where you start your mind thinking to address those questions and see if you can open up the sugya that way, to see if you can kind of get at the underlying principles of the sugya through those questions. And like, as you go through learning, what I've found is that you kind of like, you develop an intuition for which types of questions are sort of the best gateways into the underlying principles. So I'm just kind of curious, like where you guys would start, just to kind of like, discuss it a little bit.
Oh, so going into ways. You can say, well, if you get the hardest kasha, then you just got the master key. But it's normally the hardest to address that kasha first, and you go the other round and say you want to go the easiest kasha. Well, it's the easiest to make progress in, but it's the probably least positive ramifications.
Right, that's true. But I'll tell you what I think though. I don't know if I would put it in terms of hardest and easiest, at least the way I see it, because it's not always the case necessarily. It could be that sometimes, at least I found, the hardest kasha will open it up, or the easiest kasha will open it up. I think it's more in the type of the question, not the degree of difficulty of the question, but sort of where the question, what sort of thing the question is asking about. Here's what I mean. I found that here, you have two questions on Rashi, and Rashi, the two questions we had on Rashi, really Tosfos' questions on Rashi, right? They're really both questions about Rashi's source for this halacha, right? They're two different questions. One is, how could his source contradict the Gemara, be different from the Gemara source? And the other is, how could he use this source when it goes against, the principle of Zekei Levaveyu? But they both kind of deal with, how could this be Rashi's source, right? You know what I mean? Our questions on the Rambam are a little different. They're not, how could something be the source? They're questions on the way the halacha itself is set up, right? They're kind of questions on the internal workings of the halacha. How can it be that the way the halacha works is that Lulav Hayavesh is a psul, is a disqualification of the entity, and at the same time you'll have a case where the entity is suddenly no longer disqualified. You see what I'm trying to say? Like the difference between types of questions? So what I've found is that the questions that deal more with like the structure of the thing itself, like the Rambam types of questions, which deal with the way the halacha itself is formulated, are generally ones that are like easier to open up, like the workings of the sugya, because it's a little hard for me to explain, I guess, in words, but
it's more the
dealing with exactly.
I feel you, but at the same time, though, I feel like Rashi is doing way more hard lines.
That's true.
I mean, they're like this hard Gemara. So we're gonna have to, at the end of the day, or maybe at the end of this minute, have to reach to a Rashi where he's not actually disagreeing with the source at all. He's just disagreeing with some side element, or maybe even a necessary element, but definitely not the essential thing he can't be disagreeing upon. Right. But also gonna have to have some crazy meta modifier of a rule that you can't disagree. But somehow Rashi got a card. Right. He got the heter.
Where did the Torah?
Right. So how Rashi bought off the heter from Rashi, but
no, I think you're right. I agree. What Dylan is saying, I think, is true. That we're gonna, and the way we explain Rashi, we're gonna have to find a way to explain it where somehow he's not contradicting the source of the Gemara, and that's going to be our challenge. But the way that we kind of work that through, and the way that we get there, it's hard to just kind of take that head on, because where do you start? Like, how is it the case that Rashi isn't really contradicting the Gemara? So if you kind of start by going through and dealing with kind of an anomaly. Anomalies are good, right? Kushas are anomalies, right? This thing in the Rambam is an anomaly. How can it be that all of a sudden, and it's good, in the case of Shas al-Chak? It's the disqualified entity, right? I'm calling that an anomaly. Yeah. Anomalies are good because they open up, they show that kind of the underlying ideas in the sugya aren't the way we thought they were. Otherwise, this anomaly wouldn't have been produced, right? You know what I mean? When we answer the kusha, when we explain the anomaly, essentially what we're doing is we're saying, we came in with a certain preconceived notion about the way this sugya should be, and that's why we had this question, this problem, but our preconceived notion was wrong. We have to come up with a more correct notion, and that'll explain away the question. So I think what Dylan is saying is kind of an apt way of saying it. Like when you get at the questions that are more dealing with the underpinnings, the structure of the mitzvah itself, those are, I think, more of a little bit more of a direct doorway, a direct path into, the more correct, substance and underlying ideas of the sugya. And in theory, once we have those, it'll help us figure out, okay, so how is Rashi using this pasuk? There's got to be some way he's not contradicting the Gemara, but once we have a better understanding of sort of like the underlying ideas in the sugya, we should have a better sense of how Rashi could be doing what he's doing. You guys know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Just like a methodological point.
It's like, again, I'm not so great with the Brisker terms, I'm still on the learning track. Sure. But it clearly seems, I'm going to go there, it can't be, it's not a hard thing to the Chefza, because it really was that, then there's no way for for this extreme outlying case in the middle of Nebraska that it could ever happen. Right. It would be a hard line no.
Right.
And it seems to be more how you relate to it, and this goes back into like hitter and B'diavad, you should always go for the best, but if it's not there, you can use this brown thing.
Right.
I'm just, Sfar darts.
Right. I hear you.
Okay, yeah, so it doesn't seem to be so much, it was a hard rule in the Lulav, it was a hard rule of like, when you, according to your options, pick the best, and then we had a source for what's the best, and blah, 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 blah. It seems to be like the first stop on the framework train is your options, not what it must be. It's what are you dealing with.
Right.
And then according to what you're dealing with, well, this is the hierarchy of what you should do.
Okay. Let me interrupt you because we get to that minute left. I'll observe, and here's my goal for tomorrow. If you guys, there's really no more sources for tomorrow. I want you guys to think about the problems. Okay. And you can sit around and talk about ATMs for a little bit, but let's also try to think about the problems a little bit. So, and it's not gonna be, it's gonna be a little easier in a way. It'll be a little more challenging because you just gotta sit there and think rather than going through the sources. But again, on the other hand, there's no hard sources, right? You just gotta think about the questions. So we're gonna try to pick up with the Rambam in terms of the questions for tomorrow, okay? And then we'll try to move to Rashi. And if we get all the questions tomorrow, then great, and we'll move to something else for the day after. And if not, we'll go over the next couple of days going through the problems, okay, answering. But the one thing that I'll observe that I think that Dylan makes a good point. We can borrow your term. The very first stop, actually I don't know if this is the way you're using it, but I'll borrow it. The very first stop on the Svara train here is going to be like this. The premise, like we said, we're trying to start with the Rambam because that's kind of the underpinnings of the Sugya. Our premise coming into the Rambam is that the disqualification of the Lulav, because it's dried out, is a disqualification of the entity, right? You guys remember that? I made you guys agree with me. I said you guys agree. You all said yes, right? And back you guys into a corner, right? The very first step that your mind can take here, I think, is like this. Like you said, it must not be that that's strictly true. Because if that's strictly the case, that it's really straight up, that a dried out lulav is a disqualified entity, then we're just stuck. Because if that's true, very nice, you can complain to me all you want that you can't find any other lulav, but I cannot, but the Torah cannot make it from a disqualified, it's a disqualified entity. You just can't do anything about that. You're stuck.
So it is.
So it must be that, I think you're exactly right, it must be that our very first step, small step, but a good step, our very first step must be that it's not straight up a disqualified entity when it's dried out. But my question to you then is, okay, so what is it? And once we work out what is it, and you can explain how can it be that in this case of Shas Adchak, it's true by a lulav that you can use it, my follow-up will be, okay, but why is that true only of lulav and not the other meaning? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, guys, stop here.
Now, does everyone agree when you guys